Good afternoon. Today is Monday, the 2nd of September 2024, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish, delighted to be joined by Diane Rasmussen-McGaddy and also Ben Rubin. Well, a bit of a gloomy day in Plymouth, as you can see, but we'll say it's still summer-ish. But my goodness, on the political scene, things seem to just get worse. I don't think I've ever started off a UK Column News with an email, but this time I think this is the one to show. And it's a gentleman called Graham who sent quite a long email. This is just part of it. But in it, he's saying that the superficial charm from Keir Starmer has evaporated, leaving a man with no conscience or humanity. This does not bode well for the UK public. And then he goes on to say that he is personally worried about publishing this letter in case he's arrested and locked up for expressing my heartfelt opinion. But here it is anyway. So that's courage. But Graham, alongside many other people in the country, really beginning to wonder just what sort of a man Keir Starmer is. And Graham in that email does actually say, in his opinion, Keir Starmer is dangerous. Certainly, I would agree with that comment. Let's just have a look at this headline, which was from the Daily Mail. It was sent through to me, dated the 10th of April 2023. But it's saying not just dishonest, but deeply hypocritical. Guy Adams investigates how after Sir Keir Starmer went to 21 meetings of the Sentencing Council, it decided not all child sex offenders should go to prison. And the details in the article, we'll just skim through it, but of course you can always hold the screen and have a look at this. So Sir Keir attended 21 of 23 meetings at which the Sentencing Council formulated new guidelines related to 50 different sex offences. They ranged from rape and sexual assault, prostitution, grooming, sex trafficking, voyeurism, exposure, and child pornography. And eventually the council decided that 20 of these crimes could, in certain circumstances, be punished via community orders rather than prison sentences. And the article went on to point out that that number of the community orders included a total of 8 offences where the principal victim is a child, sexual assault of a child under 13, indecent photographs of children, to paying for the sexual services of a child or arranging and facilitating the sexual exploitation of a child. And the paper says this happened all on Sir Keir's watch, and there's absolutely no evidence that he ever objected to these on paper, and nor did he publicly give a flicker of concern. But let's bring this in because this was the Labour Party canvassing effectively, where they were attacking Rishi Sunak and saying, do you think adults convicted of sexually assaulting children should go to prison? And as the Daily Mail said quite rightly, utter hypocrisy, but what a reflection on the UK Prime Minister. Now let's come to The Guardian, because this starts to allow us to see what I think is cognitive dissonance. People, including long-standing journalists, simply don't understand what they're looking at. This is William Keegan from The Guardian, and his headline is, "Why Are Starmer and Reeves So Determined to Bring Britain Down?" In the article, he starts off very soon talking about policing and concerns over the police not investigating crimes. But by the end of the article, he's talking about leaving the EU and the wonders of the European Investment Bank. So William Keegan seems to be very confused as to what's going on in the country. But surprisingly, if we go back, The Guardian was pointing out some time ago, 2016, in fact, concerns about what the government had set up with regard to intelligence units and effectively spying on the population, in this case UK Muslims. But the organisation was Ricu. the Home Office's Research, Information and Communications Unit. And The Guardian straight away talking about shadowy propaganda. The unit originally inspired by a unit set up during the Cold War period, but here in 2016 was the government still using this type of shadowy organisation to spy on the British public. And of course, all of this spying infrastructure is not only still in existence in UK, it's growing. And if we follow through a little bit more on that article, here under delivering the propaganda, we get another area of concern, and that is much of the work is outsourced. So we could say bad enough to have the government spying on the public, but when it's outsourced, what is government and what is actually private sector, and what controls and checks and balances operate between the two? Well, some of our politicians did take the trouble to actually ask questions about the Ricu unit. This was an answer given 7th of March 2023, and in it talked about the levels of staffing, 22 allocated staff. It talked about the spend, and if you have a look at the box in the bottom left-hand corner on screen, you can see it dropping from 19 million in 2018-19 down to 5 million in 22-23. But nevertheless, the organisation is still in operation. And of course, it claims you can't really talk about it because the unauthorised disclosure of classified information damages the ability of the government to keep the public safe. Now, this is an area that the UK column has been warning about for a great many years. Back in 2015, we were talking about David Cameron's unravelling Stasi state, and we put in a number of key pointers: behavioural change, the organisation common purpose. Of course, Francis Maude, Minister for Transparency at that time, but note also Oliver Letwin, and of course Theresa May. So this was a really comprehensive state spying system on the public, and it has then been taken forward through later governments. And this is a quote from Suella Braverman as Home Secretary at the time, saying it's of the utmost importance that we're not deterred from our efforts to fight terrorism and extremism. And what I want to stress is the way that organisations are joined together. So she goes on to say, for PREVENT to be successful, it cannot be delivered by the Home Office alone. It requires a close-knit partnership of government departments, sectors, local authorities, policing, and community organisations, a partnership to spy on the public. This is absolutely a Stasi state, and I'm going to put that in a big red banner across that particular slide, because people need to wake up to the fact that we have a government which increasingly is hostile to the public. Let's move through this a little bit. This is some comment on PREVENT. It came through the so-called independent review body for PREVENT. But note what it says. It's talking about why we need PREVENT, where we see threats to integration and the fabric of our communities from extremism. The Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities will lead the work to tackle this. They'll use their experience and insight to inform training on wider extremist harms. So fighting extremism has now become a role of other government departments, and these are departments which are very close to communities. And if we have a look a bit more in the detail, we can see here it's talking about Channel. This is another part of the counter-terrorism system, and it says that Channel panels are chaired by local authorities and include health professionals, social workers, police and other professionals, all spying without any need to tell the target that they are actually being watched by all of these various departments. If it sounds like the Stasi in East Germany, this is worse because of the databases that go with it. And where does it lead us? To interesting organisation. Here's ProtectUK, which is putting out current national threat levels. levels. And they're saying at the moment the threat level from terrorism is substantial. This is all ramping up fear on the population. It goes on to say that Protect is Counter-terrorism Alliance, a groundbreaking joint partnership bringing together the knowledge of policing the private sector and the public sector to counter terrorism. I'm sure that Ben is listening into this because this is a large part of what he's been warning about. But if we look at what this organisation says it is doing, let's just highlight this one. Basically, it's saying that through guidance, advice and online learning, we want everyone to be equipped with the knowledge and confidence to help tackle threats of terrorism. Think about that. Everybody is to be trained to counter terrorism. And of course, where do we want to go? We want to go to children. And this is one of the many documents aimed at children, 13, 14 in this case, telling them what to do in a terrorist attack: run, hide and tell. But what caught my attention when having a look at this segment was that the insurance industry is also involved, when in fact the reinsurance industry, so we're at the level of Lloyd's. And what it's saying is that it's the expertise from the insurance industry which is going to provide financial protection against the risk of terrorism. But this organisation operating alongside the government's own counter-terrorist organisations, but if we come down to the meat of it, insurance is about making profit. And so what is the true loyalty and allegiance of the reinsurance industry? Is it to protect the country, or is it to make profit out of the woes of created terrorist incidents? So just having a little look at the people involved, this is actually the advisory board. It's not the main board of this organisation, but my eye caught Sir Oliver Letwin there, Trevor Maynard and Sir Stephen Lovegrove and General Sir Nick Carter at the bottom. But there was also a Professor Jarza Blabkowski, and I decided just to have a little listen into what she has to say on this subject.
The report that's being launched today is called Between State and Market and looks at how protection gap entities address catastrophic risk, which is growing in the world. Thank you all for coming away from pubs, cold beer and football screens. I appreciate that it's a hard act to follow, but I and my colleagues here have done some interesting research. We've got a great panel, so let's hope we make it worth your while, this sacrifice.
I want to commend Paula and her team for a very insightful and timely piece of work. Many of you will know Paula from her previous work on the global reinsurance industry. She and her team have since been collecting data on how governments and markets around the world can better work together to address the growing threat of catastrophic risk.
We may be living in a dangerous place, but if we worried about it.
So there we are. We're mixing reinsurance with terrorist threats. I get a very bad feeling about what's actually going on here.